Ukraine watched and waited for an entire year. For 12 months, it was on the hunt for something that Putin and his cronies were so desperate to hide. Patience was the name of Ukraine's game, as it knew that if it got this right, it would take away something that is immensely valuable to Russia in one fell swoop. Then it happened. The perfect opportunity arose for Ukraine to score a historic kill that destroyed what Putin was trying to hide in mere seconds. To find out more, we have to head back in time. From the start of Putin's invasion up until the spring of 2024, the Ivan Kurs prowled the waters of the Black Sea. The ship was one of the most important spy vessels that Russia has in its arsenal, and it's been tasked with providing electronic reconnaissance of Ukraine's movements, in addition to using electronic warfare to tackle drones and provide key communication and fleet command for the rest of the Black Sea Fleet. Ukraine knew that it had to take out this spy ship, even though it represented little attacking threat in its own right. It was playing a key part in organizing Russia's warships and minimizing the strength of Ukraine's attacks. Ukraine couldn't rush in. The Ivan Kurs was slippery, elusive, a ship that Putin was desperate to protect at all costs because he knew that losing it would cripple the attacking power of the Black Sea Fleet, in addition to leaving Crimea open to Ukrainian drone and missile attacks. It would take an entire year for Ukraine to find the perfect time to strike, but when that time came, Ukraine did what it had been waiting to do without hesitation. And as you'll soon discover if you keep watching the video, the true scale of the damage that Ukraine managed to do to the Ivan Kurs is only now coming to light due to the publication of sensational new photos to showcase what a wreck this once proud ship has become. But we'll get to that soon. First, the story of Ukraine's hunt for the ship is key. There were several times before Ukraine managed to score a direct hit against the Ivan Kurs. The country almost took out Russia's ship. May 2023 saw Ukraine come close in an attack that should have set alarm bells ringing for the Kremlin. Ukraine's explosive-filled drone boats managed to get a bead on the Ivan Kurs as it sailed about 75 miles northeast of the Bosporus Strait, deep in the Black Sea. This was an opportunity, though, as Ukraine would soon learn. It wasn't the perfect time to strike. Ukraine's drone boats gave chase, having sailed over 310 miles just to reach the Ivan Kurs in the first place. Still, they had gotten to where they needed to be, and it was only something that was outside of Ukraine's control that stopped the Ivan Kurs from going down far sooner than it eventually did. Ukraine's drone boats tracked and followed the ship, but inclement weather made the Black Sea choppy and also did a number on the connection that Ukraine's drone boat operators had with their vessels. Ultimately, the drone boat got almost within range of the Russian spy ship before it exploded. Unfortunately, it didn't inflict any damage. The Ivan Kurs had escaped the attack by the skin of its teeth, and Ukraine would have to wait for another day to strike. That day came around 10 months later, on March 26, 2024. Militani published satellite photographs that appeared to show the badly damaged Ivan Kurs docked in the Crimean port of Sevastopol. Ukraine's Navy spokesperson, Dmytro Pletenchuk, explained what had happened, stating that Ukraine had finally pulled off a series of missile strikes against the ship between March 23rd and 24th, which led to it being taken out of commission. At the time, we didn't know the extent of the damage that Ukraine had managed to do. All we had to go on were Pletenchuk's comments, as he reported, "As for the Ivan Kurs ship, we can confirm the damage to the reconnaissance equipment. That is, in fact, now it's not combat ready. It cannot perform its intended tasks." Not combat ready doesn't necessarily mean the ship had been destroyed, but as we've learned now, the Ivan Kurs has been made absolutely useless to Russia. The few satellite photographs that were published in March 2024 only offered some minor hints at how hard Ukraine had hit Russia's spy ship. But on February 26th, several more photographs came to light and were published by the Crimean Wind Telegram channel. The strike on the Ivan Kurs was carried out on March 24, 2024. Satellite images showed damage to the stern, the channel reported. It added, "The Russians denied damage to the ship, but after the incident, the reconnaissance ship never sailed again. The Russian Black Sea Fleet carefully hid it in its harbors. The ship is currently non-combat ready." That sort of response is typical of Russia. No matter how successful Ukraine is with its attacks, Russia will always claim that nothing happened, or if it did, damage done was minor. However, it's telling that Russia's spy ship has been languishing in the very same Sevastopol port where it was when the initial satellite images of the damaged ship surfaced. Almost 2 years later, the ship hasn't moved an inch, and when you take a closer look at the photographs, it's easy to see why. Ukraine didn't just hit the Ivan Kurs after a full year of hunting. Ukraine crippled one of the Black Sea Fleet's most vital ships. A close examination of the pictures shared by Crimean Wind, which have been taken of the Ivan Kurs at sea level rather than from far above, demonstrates the full extent of the damage that Ukraine caused. The captain's bridge has been almost completely destroyed, which immediately takes away one of the vessel's core command centers. Structural damage has also been done to the Ivan Kurz's mast and funnel, the former of which used to carry the antenna system that was so vital to the ship's key tasks of gathering intelligence and transmitting information to Russia's other warships. There are other signs that the damage goes even deeper, as United 24 media reports. For one, camouflage netting is seen covering the vessel's forward deck. It's not a stretch to assume that the netting is in place because somewhere underneath it is something that Russia doesn't want anybody to see. More damage seems to be the safest bet, and perhaps damage that is so extensive that Russia hasn't been able to repair it despite trying for almost 2 years. Speaking of repairs, the photographs also show that the ship's mast is surrounded by construction scaffolding. That implies that Russia is trying to fix its damaged ship, though it clearly isn't having much success. United 24 media adds that the equipment you would normally expect to see at the stern of the Ivan Kurz appears to be missing. Was it destroyed in Ukraine's missile strike too? Has Russia stripped the ship of that equipment because it knows that there is no hope for the Ivan Kurz to sail in the Black Sea again? We may never know the answers to these questions, but we do know this. Russia was lying when it tried to deny that Ukraine had hit the Ivan Kurz. Everything that we see of the ship now suggests that it hasn't been operational for the best part of 2 years, and given the extent of the damage that is still visible, it doesn't look like Russia is going to get it fixed anytime soon. And what this means for Russia is that the Black Sea Fleet, which has been systematically weakened by Ukraine since Putin launched his invasion, has lost a very important vessel. How important? We'll come back to that question in a moment, but before we do, you are watching The Military Show. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, take a moment to hit the button so you hear all of the latest Ukraine war news. Now, there is a big reason why Ukraine spent so much time hunting down the Ivan Kurz. A year's worth of resources adds up to no small amount of money and time, but it was all worth it because of just how important this ship was to Russia, and especially the Black Sea Fleet. Commissioned to the Black Sea Fleet in 2018, the Ivan Kurz was among Russia's most advanced intelligence collection ships. It was designed to replace Russia's bulkier Soviet-era spy ships, and we see that in its profile. The Ivan Kurz displaces no more than 4,000 tons of water, which is a very purposeful design choice to make the ship seem as unimposing as possible. Russia also made the ship so that it could stay at sea for as long as possible, as it has a range that exceeds 8,000 miles. For context, the Black Sea's largest east-to-west width is 730 miles per the US Naval Institute, which means this one spy ship could sail return journeys across the Black Sea at its widest point, almost 5.5 times before it would need to be refueled. That endurance was key. It meant that when active, the Ivan Kurz acted like ever-present eyes and ears in the single most important stretch of water in the war. KCHF.RU, which is a Russian resource that covers many of the ships in the Black Sea Fleet, explains that Russia was particularly proud of this vessel. The ship on its performance characteristics and capabilities is considerably superior to similar vessels of previous generations, mainly due to the versatility and high level of automation and systems integration, the resource says. On top of that, the Ivan Kurz could present an attacking threat. It was loaded with 6 9K-38 Igla surface-to-air missile launchers, which combined to carry 32 9M39 missiles the ship could use to fire on aircraft and helicopters. Plus, it has 4 14.5mm MTPU-1 Zalo machine guns that it can use to fire on any vessels, including drone boats that get close. This was an impressive ship, at least by Russian naval standards, and now it's ruined. Stuck in the Sevastopol port, where it's been for almost 2 years as a result of a historic Ukrainian drone strike that took a year to plan and appears to have crippled the Ivan Kurz forever. So we know what this single ship meant to Russia. But what does the confirmation of just how much damage that Ukraine's missiles managed to do mean for the Black Sea Fleet and Russia going forward? On the Black Sea Fleet front, this is a major black eye to a collection of ships that were supposed to dominate the naval aspect of the war. Ukraine wasn't even supposed to be able to compete with Russia in this department. It barely has a navy of its own, outside of patrol vessels and a handful of mine warfare ships. For Russia, the Black Sea was supposed to be a route through which it could send soldiers and equipment from Crimea and into mainland Ukraine. Instead, it's become a crypt for the crushed remains of many of the country's warships. Losing ships like the Ivan Kurz has played a huge role in the humiliation of the Black Sea Fleet that we have seen throughout the war. Remember that this was a ship that Russia specifically designed so that it would be able to see attacks coming, and yet it wasn't able to do a thing about the Ukrainian missiles that struck it. And with the ship gone, the Black Sea Fleet is more vulnerable than ever, as is Crimea, by the way, and we'll explain what that has meant for Russia in a moment. Coming back to the Black Sea Fleet, Defense 24 says that the failure of that fleet, which has lost about a third of its ships since Putin launched his invasion, is indicative of Russia not being prepared for the reality of modern naval combat operations. Aerial drones, seaborne drones, and missiles have torn through the Black Sea Fleet to the point where Russia's warships have had to withdraw so far away from Ukraine just to stay out of range that they're no longer having any sort of noticeable impact on the war. The extent of the damage caused by Ukraine is such that the fleet was even forced to leave its home port of Sevastopol and withdraw to Novorossiysk, all to avoid Ukraine's assaults. Ukraine has even conducted a Storm Shadow missile strike against the fleet's headquarters in Crimea back in 2023, which just goes to show how long and how effective Ukraine's campaign to destroy Russia's naval power has been. And that brings us back to Crimea. By now it's clear that the loss of the Ivan Kurs is just one of many that Russia's Black Sea Fleet has had to endure. That fleet is more vulnerable without the Russian intelligence ship because it isn't getting the data that it needs to properly defend against Ukraine's attacks. The exact same thing can be said about the illegally annexed Crimean Peninsula. It isn't a coincidence that Ukraine has been able to step up its attacks on Crimea now that the Ivan Kurs is stuck in the port that the rest of the Black Sea Fleet has been forced to abandon. Attacks on the bridges that lead into Crimea are a regular occurrence, as are Ukrainian strikes against key assets on the peninsula. In fact, February 20th brought with it news that Ukraine had pulled off a massive drone strike on the Belbek and Kacher airfields in Crimea, along with an attack on a fuel and lubricants depot in Zankoy. And earlier in December, Ukraine pulled off attacks in Crimea that destroyed a pair of Su-27 fighter jets and a MiG-31, along with several air defense units. These aren't isolated attacks. Ukraine's Crimea campaign has been in full swing for well over a year now, because Ukraine has done such a good job of establishing safe aerial corridors over the Black Sea. Would having Ivan Kurs operational have allowed Russia to stop all of these strikes? Probably not, but Russia may have been able to stop some of them. The ship could have been sailing through the Black Sea while serving as an early warning system for Russia's forces on the Crimean Peninsula. Instead, it's stuck in port and clearly in need of some major repairs if it's ever going to sail again. In a campaign that has seen Ukraine slowly and surely degrade Russia's defenses, the destruction of the Ivan Kurs almost 2 years ago may have been the key step that opened up so much of what we're now seeing Ukraine do in Crimea. Given that context, it's clear why Ukraine was willing to spend a year hunting this ship. The benefits on the back end, which include the untold millions, perhaps even billions of dollars in equipment that Russia has lost in Crimea, and the weakening of Russia's assaults against the Ukrainian mainland, make that year hunting extremely worthwhile. You would think that Russia would have been working as hard as it could to get the Ivan Kurs back online, especially with Crimea and the Black Sea Fleet having become so vulnerable, but it hasn't. Way back in January 2025, the Defense Post revealed that Russia had abandoned all of its ship repairs in Crimea due to fears that Ukraine would strike its repair crews as they worked. Pletnchuk was again the bearer of good news for Ukraine as he said, "The main facilities for the Russians are still in Crimea, but we've demonstrated in practice that using repair bases for the Black Sea Fleet is no longer possible," Pletnchuk said of Sevastopol, adding, "To repair their ships, they first need to bring them there, and now no one will be doing that." And though Russia does have some ship repair facilities in Novorossiysk, where the remains of the Black Sea Fleet are based, they're not anywhere near the size and scale needed to serve the entire fleet. The nearest shipyard beyond Novorossiysk is in Zelenodolsk, which is in the Republic of Tatarstan. But that's about 2,200 kilometers or around 1,360 miles away, and any warship that Russia sends there likely won't be able to get back into the Black Sea due to Turkey's banning of warships sailing through the straits that lead into the Black Sea. And even if Russia's ships could reach Zelenodolsk, the facility can only repair small missile ships that are capable of sailing into what was otherwise a landlocked location. Think back to the photographs we discussed earlier in the video. We told you that there was scaffolding around the mast of the Ivan Kurs. That would make it seem like repair work is ongoing. But if Russia hasn't been repairing ships in Sevastopol since at least January 2025, and possibly earlier, then what we're really seeing in that photograph is the remnants of a repair effort that was abandoned, along with the Ivan Kurs, where Russia withdrew from Sevastopol. Russia's destroyed spy ship, which was once the intelligence-gathering crown jewel of the entire Black Sea Fleet, now sits alone in port. With no maintenance, it will rot away slowly and under the watchful gaze of Ukraine. The only reason that the Ivan Kurs hasn't been sent to the bottom of the Black Sea is that Ukraine knows it will be a waste of a missile or drone to do so. The ship is languishing in an empty port. Now the Ivan Kurs is little more than bait that Ukraine can use to draw Russia's repair crews out. Russia could try to fix the ship. It could try to make the Ivan Kurs seaworthy again. But we'd be willing to bet dollars to donuts that any Russian crew that is dumb enough to try to reverse the effects of Ukraine's year-long hunt will be met with missiles and drones that take them out, along with the spy ship they're trying to fix. It's fair to say that Russia's spy ships haven't been having the best time of it over the last few months. And that goes for what they're trying to do outside of Ukraine, along with what the Ivan Kurs was supposed to be doing in the Black Sea. Back in November, a Russian spy ship targeted a Royal Air Force aircraft near the UK, but all that Putin achieved there was to put the UK and NATO on high alert. Find out more in our video, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to The Military Show for more analysis of the many failures of Russia's Black Sea fleet. And thank you for watching.